All right, let's go back to one of our top stories. The Madlanga Commission, which is looking into claims of infiltration in the criminal justice system, has raised concerns about what it suspects are witnesses trying to avoid giving testimony. The inquiry today announcing that doctors issuing sick notes may also have to appear to confirm that witnesses are in fact ill. Let's discuss this further with South African Medical Association chairperson, Dr Mvuyisi Mzukwa. Dr Mzukwa, thank you very much for your time. I mean, ineligible sick notes are raised as a concern at the Madlanga Commission. And I wonder what your thoughts were when you heard that the Commission may want to subpoena healthcare providers to come and explain whether or not the witnesses are ill.
Thank you so much, and good evening to you and your viewers, and thanks for the opportunity. Well, the medical certificate are governed by law, the basic conditions of employment, by also, the Health Professions Council of South Africa. There are ethical guidelines that speak to, the issuing of medical certificates. And obviously, before you issue a certificate, a person has to be examined, and as part of management, that patient can be booked off. And I think people forget that a medical certificate is part of treatment or what we call management of a condition. It's not just you're just issuing out so that the person can go and sit down and do whatever, but it's part of that. And when you have that, when you make a decision, it's not a doctor imposing a decision on the patient. It is a discussion. Whatever treatment you are dealing with, or management of a condition you are dealing with, it is a collective decision between the patient and the doctor. So even the management of that sick note, it is a collective decision based on the assessment and the discussions between the patient and the doctor.
Yeah, and we know that with these records, the sick notes, they are protected also by POPIA Act because they contain personal information, right, as well as the National Health Act. So in terms of the law, we know that courts can, in fact, override these legal prescripts. But talk to us about on what condition really would courts override these legal prescripts?
There has to be a declaration in court by the judiciary officer there, magistrate or the judge, for a doctor to do that. Or it can be, if it's for the protection of the public. If it's for the protection of the public, then in that case. But in ordinarily, you don't just on the sick note write the condition of the patient, because there's what we respect known as the patient confidentiality. So that condition that the patient are consulted for, with a medical practitioner, it has to be confidential unless there is a expression from the patient or the person that you are consulting with to say, I don't have a problem, you can disclose my medical condition. And some doctors would make that person sign, where they disclose that they agree that you can actually disclose that information, whether to the employer or to whoever where it is needed.
Yeah, I know the Commission has raised concerns of the growing number of these sick notes coming, but perhaps don't you think that they are looking at probing whether or not there's been collusion between these witnesses and medical practitioners to mislead the Commission and not appear?
Well, you must remember that the illness is not only what is visible to the physical eye. Some conditions like mental illnesses, for example, if the patient says, I'm stressing out, there's a problem that is bothering me, as a practitioner, I can't tell for sure that, you don't have a stress or you don't have pain. For example, pain syndromes. A patient, you rely solely on the patient to tell you that I've got severe headache, but you can't just tell that this patient has got severe headache. you rely on that patient. So I do think that in as much as we want to make sure that this is not abused, but we must not forget that that patient confidentiality issue is protected by law. But obviously, we must deal with cases where there's abuse of those medical certificates, especially in cases where you find that a person would just pitch up or phone a doctor and say, I request a medical certificate on a Friday or on a Monday. You begin as a practitioner to see patterns if there's an abuse of those resources. And at times you begin to speak to those people to say, but there is a problem. You always sick on a Monday. So those are the conversations that a practitioner must have with their patients when they notice that there's abuse of that. But to be using these cases and painting a picture that says these are being abused, I think it might be a huge problem to the profession, because it means that we are investigating. We want to investigate every sick note that comes out, even those that are considered illegitimate. So I think we must tread carefully on this one.
Yeah, but it's not a new thing, right? Because even employers, you make the example of patients who come and are always sick on a Monday to avoid going to work, but employers can also investigate these sick notes, so it's not a new thing.
Yes, I fully agree with you. And we encourage them to do that, because you must remember there are people who are selling these sick notes who are not even medical doctors. There are people who are, at times, they will have a legitimate signature of a doctor, but they've changed, the numbers that were given in the previous sick note. So it is within the rights of the employers to really investigate, and I would encourage all employers in South Africa, if there's a sick note, call the doctor to verify if this is a legitimate sick note that you are getting, because we are seeing a lot of that abuse of sick notes. I've been a victim recently of such identity theft myself.
And let's look at the work of the Commission. It's doing important work of probing whether there's been infiltration. And perhaps this is a time where they also need cooperation from other sectors, like the health sector. Are you in full support of the work that the Commission is doing, particularly when it looks at going into whether or not, the sick notes are legitimate? Because like you say yourself, there are instances where the processes are abused. There are instances where people who are not even legal practitioners are issuing out these sick notes.
100%. The South African Medical Association, we fully support the work of the Commission, and we encourage our colleagues, to fully cooperate with the work of the Commission. But I think that we need to balance it out with the confidentiality, that when patients come to us, like I said earlier on, there are cases where you cannot tell, objectively, that there's a problem with this person, and the person tells you that they've got this legitimate problem like abdominal pain. So at times there are no objective means of ensuring that it is the case. Hence, I was saying, it will take a cooperation between the practitioners and the Commission itself. But we need to really tread carefully, especially when it comes to confidentiality issues, because we are bound by law to keep that confidentiality.
And how prevalent really is this issue of fake or fraudulent sick notes in the industry? And what have you done so far to try and curb that?
Well, it's a very prevalent problem, to be specific. It's very prevalent, where you find that there are fraudulent medical certificates. They are not coming from a legitimate practitioner, because a medical certificate must come from a registered medical practitioner or dentist or a nurse who's registered with the Health Professions Council or the South African Nursing Council. And, that person can issue out a medical certificate. Even psychologists can issue out a certificate. But what I'm saying is, we need to we do need to cooperate, between the employers and the medical profession. And what we have noted, what we have done as the South African Medical Association is that we've been conducting ethics, continuing professional development, where we speak about these issues, especially the issue of sick notes, of fraudulency, even fraud itself, fraud, waste and abuse. We've been always at the forefront of encouraging and having conversations with our colleagues in the profession.
All right, Dr. Mvuyisi Mzukwa is the chairperson of the South African Medical Association. Thank you very much for your time this evening.